Dom here from Essential RC. Thanks very much for tuning in for another Essential RC flight test. Tending to cut these reviews into two videos now. The first one being unboxing and assembly, and the second, the flying. I think unboxing and assembly is important, as I hear from you who watch these videos, because you want to see the quality of the kit. You want to see how easily it goes together and any problems that I may encounter along the way, and I'm more than happy to do that. Thanks for your feedback to date on that and the videos that we have been doing like that. So what do I have here? This is the ESR F-16 jet from our friends at Banggood.com. Some quick information on this. You can get it in kit or plug and play format. In plug and play format, you get everything in the box, with the exception, as you'd expect, of the flight battery, which needs to be a 4-cell 2200 milliamp hour LiPo. You don't get your transmitter, the receiver, and the charger, obviously. But otherwise, it's ready to go. In the kit, you don't get any of the electronics, which is great if you were to get this and then, God forbid, should you crash it and write it off, which is pretty hard to do when it's a model that's made of EPO foam and it to be beyond repair. But the kit is a lot cheaper, obviously, and will enable you to transplant all of the electronics across into that new airframe so you can get in the air again. What else can I tell you? The wingspan is 700 millimeters, length is 1035 millimeters, flying weight is 700 grams. So it's a decent size, but it's going to fit on the passenger seat of your car, taking it to the flying field. So let's take the components out of the box. Let's see what we get. Okay, so here we have all the parts for the ESR F-16. Not very many of them. It's fairly well complete already out of the box. So the fuselage, you can see we've got the XT60 connector already there, going through to the speed controller, which is attached to the motor. In the fan unit at the back, we've got the servo leads for everything, so we can plug those into our receiver. The canopy is in two plastic pieces, so we just have to glue that together and decide if we put a pilot inside, which is not included, I'll add. Stickers already on here, so the scheme is already in place. Vertical stabilizer will go here with its rudder. Bit of paint missing from the tail cone. I thought I'd just point that out if it's been rubbing against something in the box, but no great problem. Can touch that up. And then looking at underneath, you can see this is where the steerable nose wheel goes, and there's a servo for that inside. And then we've got the servos already in place for the tailerons, and the tailerons are here. Already got the decals on there. We've got some strengthening to put in place, so they fix to the side of the fuselage firmly. We've got to put the horns in place and connect those up to the servos. Access hatch here for the fan unit if we need to take that out and replace it. And the mains landing gear is going to go here, if I haven't mentioned that already. What else do we have? We've got the wings. The wings are complete. Servos are already in place. Hooked up to the horns using the push rods. Just got to glue those in place. And then we got the vertical stabilizer and rudder. Although what I've noticed is that the end hole has broken on the horn on the rudder. No great problem. I will just go put the clevis in one of the inner holes and sand that down so it looks okay. Landing gear. So you got your steerable nose wheel there with the grub screws and connector to fix it to the rod that is used by the servo, but and the mains landing gear for assembly, and the axles are there as well. But I'm not going to use these, to be honest. I'm just going to hand launch and not go with the landing gear. That's what I prefer to do, because I think in the air some of these models look a bit ugly if you do put the landing gear on them and it's fixed, when the full size has retractable landing gear, obviously. So that's it. It won't take very long to put this together, I don't think. It's just gluing, but if there are any steps or tips along the way, I'll certainly go through those now. So step number 1, before you glue anything together, you need to test that the servos actually work. I mean, I very rarely get problems with kits like this, but what you would not want to do is to glue this model together and then find you have a servo problem and need to replace it. It would be very difficult to replace it at that point. So test everything first. So you see here that I've connected everything to my receiver. I've bound the receiver to my transmitter. I've connected up a 4-cell LiPo. I've tested that the elevator servos are working underneath. There are 2 of them, so they need to go into separate channels. I've got the ailerons on the wings working. There's a Y lead in here so that it goes into just your aileron channel on your receiver, and those are definitely working. And I've checked that the rudder servo is working. I've also tested that I'm getting power out of the fan, so that's working. I haven't yet checked that I did check a minute ago actually, that the nose wheel steering servo is working, but I'm not going to be using that, so I'm not too fussed, but it does work. That is the very first thing to do. Now I can start gluing this ESR F-16 together. Next tip, before gluing on the wings, we need a way of getting rid of all this excess cable. The only way is to pull that through the fuselage. But before I do that, I want to make absolutely sure these connectors can't come undone. So I'm using some 3M surgical tape to wrap around where they connect to make sure that does not come apart. Worth mentioning that glue is not provided in the kit, but one of the best on the market is Yoo-Hoo Pour. So make sure you apply that to the one side of the surfaces to contact and let it dry for a couple of minutes before pushing the surfaces together. So next we've got the tailerons. For each taileron there is a little bit of ply with a hole through it and a glass fibre rod. So if you look carefully at the bit of ply, you can see that the hole is near the top of that piece. So I think that goes that way up. Push it into the slot. Now if you just push it in without much effort, you can see that it's still coming out of the underside, so you do have to push it quite firmly in to get it practically flush with the underside of the taileron. Now that's just a dry fit, just to check that it all fits together before I commit to gluing it together, which is always a good idea, but that's what it should look like. And now I'll put apply some glue to the pieces and then glue it to the side of the fuselage. So while the glass fibre rod and the ply pieces are gluing into place in the tailerons, I'll put those to one side and focus on the vertical stabiliser and rudder. So the problem with this was that if I put that there, as it should go into the slot in the fuselage, you can see that the cable from attached to the servo is not long enough to go to the receiver in the front of the fuselage. So what I've had to do is use an extra servo cable extension, which does not come with the kit. You'll need to get that so that it can go through all the way to the receiver. The problem is then how to pull this through the fuselage to the receiver. Fortunately, with another kit, I got this long bit of wire, but you could use a bit of wire from anywhere else that's curled over at the end. So I will poke that through until it comes through here at the back, and then pull that cable all the way through to the receiver. There we go. So a little bit of patience and you can pull it through and connect it into the rudder channel on your receiver. Like so. And then we're going to glue it in place, making sure that it aligns with the back of the exhaust pipe like that. did notice as well that wanting to glue the vertical stabilizer in place, you want the glue to go underneath and on the side of this because there's a recess in the top of the fuselage. So my advice is to cut away some of the film like that, so you can apply the glue to the side of this as well, and do the same on the other side, and then it should go in place and stay in place while you're flying at high speed. So the glue has now set. The ply and the glass fibre rod in each of the tailerons is now glued in place, which is fantastic. I thought that was worth doing before I tried to glue these onto the fuselage. And that's what you have to do next. Now, these are not actually tailerons, they are, I don't think, they're elevators hinged onto these horizontal stabilizers. But you glue this surface onto the side of the fuselage, and the rod has to go in this hole and then through a piece of ply with a hole in it on the inside of the thrust tube. Don't know if you can see that bit of ply in there, but I've been trying for half an hour to do that without success. I can't find the hole in the side of that piece of ply. So I think I'm going to have to push out those pieces of ply and figure out how to solve that problem. I will be back momentarily. So that is the pesky little bit of ply, and it does actually go on the end of the glass fibre rod. So no problem. What I will do actually is glue this in place first, and then with some tweezers I will glue that onto the end of the rod inside the fuselage. I think that is the best way to do it. So there we go, and I'm glad I did it that way actually, because the rods were too long and I've trimmed them down so they don't interfere with the airflow, which they would do, and you want to reduce that as much as possible because it would be detrimental to the performance of the jet if they are crossing too much into the airflow that comes out the back of the fan. The other thing to make sure is that the incidence of the horizontal stabilizers on both sides is the same. I think that's about right for them to be level, but it's more important that they're the same on both sides so you don't get any roll effect either way and have to trim that out. So all good. Now all that's left to do is to hook up the elevators with the servos. To fit the horns in the elevators, you need to peel back the covering and then fit the horn in like that. But to be specific, you can see there the back part, it actually goes upside down and through it like that. Very important. Okay, so I've got one of the push rods connected to the horn on the elevator, and you can see that it's too short. Mystified by this. So, I mean, I could do that for the middle point, the neutral point on the elevator, but I don't think that's very good because it's not going to allow me much enough throw that I want for pitching up. So the only way I can see around this is to pull the servo out and turn it around so the output gear is closer, and then I think I'll be fine. So I think that's what I'm going to have to do next. Okay, so problem solved. I took the servos out, rotated them 180 degrees, glued them back in, Z-bend on the push rod at that end and the clevis at this end. It is important on these plastic snap shut clevises to put something on them to make sure they stay closed, because they can pop open
under force when you're flying. So I would normally use a bit of fuel tubing, but I didn't have any, so I couldn't find any. So I have used a bit of shrink tubing on those. Job done. What else have I done? I have stuck down the decals. They were peeling up a little bit, so used a little bit of glue and a little bit of tape, the 3M Blend tape to hold those down. And I've also done the canopy as well, which was in two pieces, the transparent piece and the black piece of plastic underneath with the magnets. So just use a few bits of tape underneath to hold that all together.
So there you go, that's the ESR F-16 from our friends at Banggood.com, ready to go. A few little challenges putting this together, but just common sense, and it goes together fairly easily. And if you don't have common sense, then thank God you were watching this unboxing and assembly guide, because the result is definitely worth it. So the maiden flight of this F-16 really soon. We will do a video for that in the near future. What you'll want to do is to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications to make sure you don't miss that video. The link for this product is in the video description and the pinned comment for this video. So if you want to know the price, then click on that link. You may be pleasantly surprised. But otherwise, thanks for watching. See you for the maiden flight in the very near future.